bills that have previously been heard, and we have one bill that we're given a full hearing to. Anyone who'd like to sign up for Senate Bill 474, Senator Carter's bill, the sign-up sheet is on the podium. I think it is still there, isn't it? It's over here with Philip. Hold up your hand, Philip. We'll see you. Also, I ask you to please turn off your cell phones. I'm hearing a lot of vibrating, even though the phones are off. It sounds like crickets up here. So please put them in your pockets or something. I'd like to remind you that we will be hearing Representative Brown, Representative Martin, Representative Parson, Representative Ash's bills. They were heard in subcommittee, and I think all of these were heard in your subcommittee. Is that not correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. So at this time, I would like to remind you once again, if you have any questions, concerns, please come. Let Philip know. Raise your hand. He'll come see you and get the information. At this time, I'd like to ask Representative Maxwell. I failed to do something this morning. I said I would not do it. Representative Keon, would you please have our prayer? I meant to do that this morning. We need a lot of prayer this morning, all these decisions we're making. So would you please have an opening prayer?
Father God, again, we thank you, Lord, for another day, and we just pray that you bless us, give us wisdom. We'll deal with a lot of things that are very important. God, we just pray that you help us be able to discern those things that are most important. And bless our deliberations this afternoon. Thank you for a beautiful day.
Amen. All right, this time I'd like to take up, if you look in your folder, we're going to take up House Bill, and I think you have a substitute. Is that not correct? And Representative Maxwell, I'd like for you to make what did your committee rule on that bill? House Bill 1098. What was your recommendation?
We passed that with some substitute language, Mr. Chairman, and this will be presented today as committee substitute.
What bill will we be working from? Do you have it?
LC 33129-8S.
33129. S8S. Does everyone have a copy? We don't. Philip's giving them out now, so Philip is passing them. While he's doing that, I'd like to ask Representative Dixon. He had some concerns. I'd like him to tell us if his concerns have been addressed. His concerns were about the 65%. So would you please tell us what your concerns were and have they been addressed before we start? Rep.
The concerns were that with the 65% rule in place, spending such as this bill would provide for would have counted in the 35%, and it was my opinion that would cause a lot of systems to not participate simply because of its impact on their ability to meet the 65% test. As I had suggested, we met with the people from OPB, the Department of Education, and the Governor's Office, and began to have talks on the possibility of shielding federal grants that dealt with this particular program from being a part of the 65% calculations. Those talks are not finalized yet, but within the context of what we were talking about in that meeting, everybody was very supportive of making that work. And so with that in mind, I would be fully supportive of this bill.
All right. So if no further delay, then what was your recommendation? Do pass with that recommendation, Representative Maxwell?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I'd like to ask Representative Ash, she please come forward and talk with us about her substitute bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. A special thank you to the members of the subcommittee that heard this legislation and worked hard to make it workable for Georgia's children. 10 years ago, I was involved in the school breakfast legislation. When that legislation happened, Georgia was 48th in participation in the number of students who were eligible for free and reduced meals who got breakfast. After we as a state said breakfast is important, Georgia is now 8th in the nation in school breakfast participation. So kids aren't coming to school, aren't staying in school as hungry as they were before. But something happens when summer occurs. All of a sudden, students who have received free and reduced meals during the school year are no longer in a place where they can get them. At this point in time, we have only 17.3% of the eligible school-age children who received summer meals in 2004. The dollars are available from Washington. You'll see in the legislation on line 21 and 22 on page 1, that if in fact these federal dollars cease to flow, there will not be the requirement for a system to be involved in this program. We've been very careful to make sure that it is permissive, that it is encouraging school systems to work with community collaboratives to draw down the money. What happens is it really is more than the $7 million we might get in Georgia in July if only 40% of the students who are eligible participate, because those dollars are multiplied. Those are jobs for nutrition workers during the summer. Those are dollars spent on food products, often from Georgia. The reimbursement rates are such that folks think this is a way not only to help kids, but to also help Georgia.
Representative Ash, how many school systems are doing this presently?
There are 24 that are not.
24 out of the 180?
That's right.
180, and there are only 24 now. And this is just...
This is to add one more. Please look at these programs. Please think about how the communities... And it doesn't necessarily need to be the school.
Okay.
It can be the school working with the Department of Early Care and Learning to figure out what are the summer programs in an area that can work to do this. And that's why it was going to be so confusing if we got to the 35, 65, because, which school would count for these programs that are going on.
And it won't have to be in the school building. It could be in a daycare, whatever there.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? Representative Morgan? Yours? Who's 10 now? Okay. Y'all keep moving around on Representative Kidd.
Thank you for bringing this bill, and I'm curious, is there a limit to how many programs during the summer that a school can associate with, as long as they have?
No. And one of the things that's very exciting to me about this piece of legislation is that it really asks communities to talk between early care and learning, between the school systems, between the community-based organizations, to say, how can we better feed children? Because all of a sudden, when school's over, they don't cease to be hungry.
Okay.
Now, there is one modification to the bill that we do need to make, a drafting error.
All right, what is that?
That occurred on lines 13 and
Page 1?
Page 1.
Right.
It says each local system in the state is encouraged to establish a summer food service program for all students eligible for free and reduced price school meals. So I would ask the committee to accept this committee substitute and make that amendment.
All right, so that would read programs for all, mark out eligible, all students, and insert eligible for free and reduced price lunches.
That's right. Well, except the technical language in the federal law is now free and reduced price school meals.
Price summer?
No, school meals.
Price school meals, all right? Free and reduced price school meals. So it will be, you'll say programs for all, after all on line 14, strike eligible, have students insert eligible for free and reduced price school meals. Is that correct? For at least 40 consecutive days weekend.
That's correct.
All right. All right. Do I have anyone? I have number 7. You got your question answered, didn't you, Reverend? All right. We have the requested amendment. Do I hear a second to that amendment?
Second.
I have a second. Anybody opposed? All in favor of that amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Okay. Do I have a recommendation? Any questions? More questions on the bill? If not, do I have a motion? Representative Dixon.
Move to issue a recommendation of due pass.
Have a recommendation of due pass. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Unanimous. Thank you so much, Representative Ash. And it's yours to go to rules with.
And thank you, members of the committee.
We'll help you, though. I like it, Representative. We'll help you. All right, at this time, we'd like to ask Representative Maxwell, do you have a recommendation on House Bill 1316?
Yes, we do, Mr. Chairman. We recommend pass that out to committee with unanimous vote to the full committee.
All right, we have a due pass recommendation on House Bill 1316. Again, it's been discussed in subcommittee. Do I have the authors here? If you would please come up to the podium and please quickly present the bill. And
Mr. Chairman, this came to you by committee substitute. I don't have a copy of it.
Is it all right? Good.
Thank you very
All right, y'all. Does everyone have the bill, the committee substitute now? Your bill. Be sure you have it. We're looking at 1316. Everyone have it? 1316. Are we working from LC 370122S? Is that it? Is that it? Is that the correct substitute, Philip? Does everyone have it? LC 370122S. Substitute to House Bill 1316. Everybody have it? Okay, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This bill comes to you by committee substitute. We made a couple of modifications that were requested in subcommittee. I think they helped to make the bill better. This is to create a House Senate Oversight Committee to work with organizations like the Georgia High School Association. I appreciate your passage of our bill earlier that deals with them. We've had what I would call nothing less than a stellar dialogue with officials from that organization. And what we wish to do in this bill, simply put, Mr. Chairman, is to create an openness for Georgia citizens. The High School Association, by definition, has member schools, and they do a good job in communicating with their schools. What we'd like this Oversight Committee to do is provide that communication to the student athletes and their parents in Georgia, and we want to be helpful in helping them communicate their rules, policies, procedures, how their board's elected. We don't want to get into the business of telling them how many minutes should be in quarters nor anything of the like. We just want to help them communicate with the citizens of Georgia who pay our salary and pay their bills.
Okay. I want to remind this committee you're all being televised, and if anybody in the audience has a question, raise your hand. Philip over here will come get you and bring a question to you. So let's keep this thing in order. Do I have any questions to the author of the bill? Any questions for the author of the bill? Any question? All right, anybody have a comment? Anyone have a comment? Because we discussed it in subcommittee quite extensively, I know. And we have this as a committee substitute. All right, do I have a recommendation? Oh, you have a question? All right, what is it, Representative Morgan?
If there is a cost to this bill, it would have to be it would be subject to appropriations. I suspect this committee could work within the current legislative budget, so I don't suspect there would be additional costs.
All right, any other questions? All right, do I have a motion? I have a motion to pass. I have a second, Representative Jones. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the passage of this bill, House Bill 1316 by substitute, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Unanimous. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I know you got a busy day. I just want to be remiss if I didn't thank the Georgia High School Association for working with us on the bill and their work with us to help the young man situation that this committee moved on earlier. I appreciate it. I do say that. I want to say they did. They did contact us and said they were supportive of this, and so it's very important. Okay. All right. Now is Representative Parson here. Is he here? I think I see him. We're ready to call. Do you have a recommendation, please, Representative Maxwell, on House Bill 1483?
Yes, sir. 1483 was passed as a committee substitute also, and passed unanimously out of the academic support.
All right, you're working from substitute to House Bill 1483 LC 370121S. Everyone have that one? LC 370121S. Do you have a copy, Representative Parsons? Would you please give the author of the bill a copy? Philip, do you have an extra copy? If you please provide the author. I think it's very important for him to have a copy to speak from. So at this time, we'll call on Representative Parsons to please present his bill. What was your recommendation, Maxwell?
Do pass.
Do pass, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. As you know, some local school systems provide a local supplement to teacher salaries. And many times when we provide a raise here in the state legislature to our teachers, the local systems, in order not to have to increase the amount of money they pay to the teachers with that local supplement, will actually decrease the percentage or decrease the amount that they pay. All this bill does, and then currently in law, they're required before they do that to have a hearing. I think your chairman was instrumental in that a few years ago. I understand that they don't always have hearings, but what this bill would do would be to provide that they have two public hearings, and that make sure I'm make sure your substitute says the same thing. 2 public hearings, and there would have to be put in the local, the local organ, a notice which would include the time, the place, the agenda, and specific subject matter of the meeting. And also, written notice would be provided each employee, I think, through the school system. Y'all have changed the language there. But written notice shall be provided each employee, subject to the scheduled minimum salaries under subsection, at least 7 days prior to the date of the hearings. It's not saying that they can't lower the subsidy or lower the supplement. It's just giving the teachers an opportunity before that's done to come to a hearing. And since they're not doing the one hearing now, this kind of makes it more clear. You got to have at least 2 hearings, and that information has to be put in the local legal organ. Plus, the information has to be provided out through the school system, and it gives the teachers an opportunity. I guess that's still in here. After hours, so that the teachers can actually attend. And somebody asked in the subcommittee, I appreciate all the questions there, about what that would actually do if they're going to do it anyway, what that would actually do. It gives the teachers who depend on their pay as school teachers, it gives them the opportunity to maybe call their local newspaper and say, you need to be here and see what kind of explanation the local system is giving. And it gives them the opportunity to raise objections to it. And that's really what it does.
Yeah, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Representative Parsons, the key to your bill was the second page, what you really were concerned about, and that was that each hearing shall be after school hours, where all certificated and non-certificated personnel could attend the hearing. That was your real concern, right?
Exactly.
To be sure they could concern. So that's the crux of what he's doing. Do I have any questions from members of the committee? Number 9, that's Representative Morgan.
Hello, gentlemen from Cobb County.
My friend from Cobb. A young friend from Cobb.
I just have a question. It's not specifically to the bill, but did I hear you say that when the state gives teachers a raise, the local systems can lower what they give? Does that in effect mean that they're not really getting a raise?
Well, they would get the raise that we give, but then that local supplement is under the control of the local system. I mean, they can lower it, they can take it away if they want to, or they can raise it. But what they do generally, I think, is that they haven't necessarily done the same budgeting. They have not necessarily budgeted for this increase that we give down here. So sometimes I think they are in a position where they, I'm not trying to defend them, but I can see how they might be in a position where they would possibly have to lower the supplement, the percentage, so that the total amount that they spend for that supplement doesn't increase. And that's why it happens that way.
To answer your question, Representative, what had happened several years ago, there was real concern when the state passed along, especially when we were doing it 7, 8, 10% a year, giving big raises, that some of the systems, it was really an impact on them. So what they were doing, we'd pass the raise along, and they may decrease it half of that by lowering their local supplement. And we tried to introduce a bill that said when the years that the state gives a raise, the local systems may not reduce their local supplement, but the Attorney General rule, that's unconstitutional. You cannot tell a local system what they what they have to pay. So, and not a lot of them do it, but some may, and that's why this hearing was put in there, where they have to tell the people that where the money was coming from, why they were doing it. Okay. Other questions? I have number 7. That's Representative Maxwell.
I just going to clarify a point there also. But when a raise is passed on, or when a raise is given, Social Security, retirement, and other benefits are just never included in that raise. Local systems have to make that up. And it's very hard for local systems that don't have a good basis to make that up. So sometimes it puts them in a real bind when raise is given.
Especially they're hitting near the top of their millage, isn't that correct? All right, Representative number 28. That's Representative Houston.
Thank you. I'm glad Howard pointed that out. I just wanted to make it clear and that the local school systems have other expenses that go along with the raises that the state doesn't cover, and that's one reason they did it. Not that they're trying to cut teachers or hurt them, but it's just hard sometimes when we give a big raise for the local system to come up with the Social Security and the added things that go along with increase?
I don't know the exact number, but Representative Jones may tell. I think that what the raise that the systems, that the state pays, what, about 75% of that? I see some heads nodding. In the local systems, 20% is local. Is that correct? I don't hear any. Is that right, Representative Jones? Okay, the locals have to come up with. Are there other questions? If not, I have no other questions. Do I have a motion? Move that the bill do pass. Do I hear a second? I have a second. Any questions or discussion? If not, I put the question. All in favor of the passage of this bill, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. It is unanimous. Thank you, Representative Parsons, and you move on to the rules. All right, this time, Representative Maxwell, I'd like for you to give us your recommendation, please, for House Bill 1229, Representative Brown, the 69th.
Mr. Chairman, that was also passed out of committee, substitute, passed unanimously.
All right, that's House Bill 1229 by substitute. Am I correct that we're dealing with Bill LC 370123S? LC 370123S. Does the author of the bill have a copy of the substitute?
I do not, Mr. Chairman.
Well, we will have you a copy delivered. I'm so sorry. To you immediately. Here it comes, okay? All right. So if you would please come to the podium, Representative Brown, and present your bill.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I bring you House Bill 1229, and I'm going to tell you right up front, I'm a little confused about the direction. I think it's a darn good bill. I think Chairman Maxwell's committee felt that way. I've gotten a lot of calls, but the Department of Education, and that's one reason I've been late, I've been in conversation with Stuart Bennett, and he indicates that he'd kind of like us to hold on this bill because they're working on something. Well, I'm not sure what something isn't because I kept pressing to get a real date specific from him, and he wasn't in a position to give that. And I certainly have a lot of respect for his position for that department. But I would encourage you, and Mr. Chairman, if it's your desire, I'll go through the bill.
Please do.
But right up front, unless I get direction otherwise, I'd like to see the committee pass it. I mean, we all know we're right at crossover. And by passing it, it gives us all types of options. If we were to turn it down today and just hope that DOE is going to do something, I think, one, we've sent a bad signal to our students. They don't know what to do for yet another year. And if we find through the process, on into Rules Committee on Wednesday, on to the House floor, and then the whole process, we got lots of time to correct it if we pass it out of here, and even if we pass it out of the House. So, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay with you, and I know this is a bit of a switch from our conversation yesterday that I hadn't had.
Fine.
Is that okay, sir?
Yes, sir. Please do.
Okay. Basically, what this bill does, it recognizes the need to strengthen the intellect of high school students, line 16 of page 1. It talks about the disparity between the levels of rigor in honors, and I thought it was very interesting. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution editorial today, talking about this exact type of thing. And just to give you a bit of history, it's my understanding in 2004, because of the Hope Task Force, by legislation, the extra credit that used to be given to honors courses was removed. And so today you have a situation where it gets exactly the same credit as a regular course. And I want you to think about that. It just seems to make no sense to me. We know that there's variations in honors courses. We know that unlike the International Baccalaureate, unlike the advanced placement, that you don't have the consistency of some type of test. Nonetheless, I think it's fair to say that the typical student in the typical honors program is going to have to work harder than the typical student in the typical non-honors course. And yet we're not willing to give them any more credit. And I think all of us will agree that we're in the process of making our curriculum more rigorous. But that's not an overnight process. We also, it's my understanding, that in AP you've got an irony. You take the AP course and you fail the test. Nonetheless, you get the extra half-point credit. And I'm certainly not an education expert. In my whole 12-year trek in the House, I haven't been on this committee, so I will certainly concede to you if I make a misstatement, and the process that the chairman has will allow those mistakes to be corrected. So in sum and substance, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions, I encourage the Education Committee to pass House Bill 1229, the committee substitute that came out of Chairman Maxwell's subcommittee. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm open for questions.
Any questions from the committee about this House bill? Any questions from the committee? If not, I recognize Representative Jones for a comment or a motion.
I just had a comment. I agree with Bill, and I have seen it in high school ever since we made that change, that there is fewer students, and I'm sure that the members would bear this out, are taking honors classes. Of course, it's not just Hope, but our universities do not give extra points either, and that would be the other thing to address. University of Georgia and Tech only give extra points, and I assume that's true for the others, for AP classes. And so the kids are gaming it. And I applaud Superintendent Kathy Cox for making it very much a part of her mission to increase the rigor of the curriculum, encourage students, but we've created a disincentive for students to take rigorous classes, and I appreciate the position of the Department of Education that we don't have standards, but until we develop those standards, I'd rather err on encouraging rigor than err on creating a disincentive.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, might I comment on that?
Yes, sir, please.
If you look on page 1, lines 18, and I think they're the same in both bills, it says, a study should be conducted to determine whether disparity exists in the levels of rigor in honors core classes around the state and to ensure parity throughout the state. I applaud that. That's exactly what Stuart Brown is doing right now and working with the Georgia Education Commission there. But, read on. In the interim, the law of the state should in no way dissuade the interest of students in taking such rigorous academic courses out of fear that doing so would jeopardize academic rankings for their ability to obtain a Hope Scholarship. So all this is an interim situation until the Department of Education comes back with these guidelines, finished with their research. But I sure don't want to see us, at a bare minimum, we miss a year. And it is quite likely we could miss as many as 2 years. And I really think that's a terrible message to give to the students of this state.
Yes. All right, I have a question. I think it's Representative Holt. Is that correct? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I simply request at the appropriate time the opportunity to make a motion.
All right, what's your motion? Is it okay? Would you mind if I let him do that, Representative Dixon? He's dying to do it, and he's good. What's your motion? As long as it's the motion we want. No.
Yes, sir.
What's your motion, Representative Holt?
My motion is that we do pass.
All right. Would you like to second that? I have a second to that. Any questions or comments on this? At this time, I ask all that are in favor of this bill to please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. The bill does pass. So thank you, Representative Brown. And I would encourage you, I see the State Department people in our audience, if you would, I think it would be very important for you to get with Representative Brown, and let's get some answers. I'd like to know, and what are we going to do? Some time certain when we're going to do that's important. Thank you so much.
Chairman and members of the committee, thank you.
All right. At this time, we have, now this next bill, if I could have the sign-up sheet at my desk now. Philip, if you bring it up there, no one else will be allowed to sign up. At this time, we have a bill we're going to take up. It's a Senate bill. This bill is receiving a full hearing in committee today because we did not, it was referred from subcommittee. Did you hear that bill, Representative Maxwell?
Representative Costas.
Oh, okay. It was Representative Costas' committee. So Representative Costas' subcommittee. And Representative Costas, please give us your recommendation of what you're, on this bill, what you recommended. Let me get you. You're on number what? 17. Get your number turned on.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if I can tell you what I recommended.
I know it. That's why I want you to tell me.
I believe that this bill was heard in Representative Maxwell's subcommittee.
It was in your committee, and you know you recommended it. Yeah. It was in your committee.
Well, Mr. Chairman, certainly there was no subcommittee. So,
What you said to me was y'all sat here in full committee.
therefore, we do have it in full committee without recommendation.
Good, good. So this is in full committee. He felt this bill was so important and that it was so critical that it was too important for just half the committee to hear, and so we wanted the full committee to hear it. So we'll be a full hearing today. Now we have a list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 or 12 speakers. Now speakers, let me tell you what we're going to do. We're going to give the author time. You will have 1 minute to about 1.5 to, depending on where you're trying to wrap up, to present your argument or make your statement from the audience. I'll call you in the order as you signed up, and even if we do that, we're still here about 35, 40 minutes just on comments from the audience. So at this time, I would like to ask the author of the bill to come forward. We're going to be listening, very carefully where you'll know, we're going to be speaking from Senate Bill 474 substitute. I think this is correct, Senator. Correct me. LC 33-145-4S. Is that right?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
And so Senator Carter from the Senate will be presenting at this time. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to bring before you Senate Bill 474. We, many times in the legislature, try to put names on a piece of legislation. Sometimes, as you've seen, it's silly when we try to do that. We felt the need to do that on this bill because we wanted to make sure that the focus was in the appropriate place. Now, those of you who have had a chance to look at the legislation and maybe have heard comment, received phone calls or emails about the bill, I think you know, and maybe a couple of you have, I think you know that the part of the bill that gets the most attention is the part of the bill that talks about physical education requirements in terms of minutes per day or minutes per week. And that part of the bill gets the most attention, but one of the reasons, and I'll go back to my initial comment about why we wanted to give this bill a name, and it's called the Student Health and Fitness Act, is because it's about so much more than just physical education requirements. It's about changing the way that we think about student health and we think about fitness. Before I had the opportunity to serve in the legislature, I had the pleasure of serving on the Tift County Board of Education. And I go back to a few years ago when I sat on that board and we were having a discussion with a group of principals about where we could get another 10 minutes for seat time. And you've heard that term, seat time, for the more traditional academic subjects. Where could we find another 10 minutes? And, of course, the discussion turned to physical education by taking another 10 minutes out of the day of physical education. And we've done that on a number of occasions. And every time we took that action, it really troubled me. And I said to that principal, when are we going to stop this activity? Why do we always go in that direction? I think we're setting a bad precedent. And he looked at me, and I remember it just like it was yesterday. He said, Mr. Carter, you are not, and I apologize for this because it offends me. He said, you are not going to save that fat kid with an extra 10 minutes of PE a day. Now, maybe he's right as it relates to that kid, but I don't believe it. Because I do believe that as members of this body, we have a responsibility to lead, to point folks in the right direction. That's many times what we're called on to do here in the legislature. If you, and I've tried this, if you go into any elementary school classroom in this state and you ask those students what are the two most important subjects that we teach, they will tell you, to a person, they will tell you math and reading. The reason they tell you that is because those are the signals that we have sent to those students. We do it because we concentrate more time on those two subjects. We do it because the barrage of standardized tests that we subject our students to are centered around those two subjects. Our own SAT is primarily centered around those two subjects. And I don't argue the point. I would probably agree with them that those are the two most important subjects in school. But they arrive at that conclusion not because they have assessed what are the building blocks for my future or what's going to take me into tomorrow. They arrive at that conclusion because those are the messages that we have sent by our behavior and where we have put emphasis. I make that point to say this. We've sent an equally loud but wrong message when it comes to physical activity. We treat physical activity and physical education and healthy lifestyle choices as electives. And when we look at the fact that 43% of Georgia's third graders, according to the Department of Human Resources, are classified as overweight, and when you consider that 43% of third graders
next year will be fourth graders, and one day will be adults. That same 43%, many of those will struggle with health problems related to obesity, related to type 2 diabetes, related to the early onset of heart disease. When you consider those facts, I think that we have to take some measure to make this issue an important issue, to put it on the forefront, to put more focus on it than we have in the past. Now, having said all of that, let me talk with you a little bit about the specifics of the legislation and some changes that we have made. Initially, when the bill was drafted and as was passed by the Senate, the bill required 150 minutes per week of physical education instruction and went into some detail to define what that instruction should be. It never required any minute requirement for middle schools. And that was some misconception about the bill, but there was never a requirement for middle schools. There was simply a requirement that middle schools look at how they could provide 225 minutes per week of physical education instruction. Now, that's a lot. And I'll grant you, that's a lot of time. That's not a number that I plucked out of the air. That's based on science and how much activity that children of that age group need per week. That's really only half of what the CDC recommends. And so we arrived at that figure by saying if maybe we can point them in the direction of doing half of that during the school day and half of that could be obtained outside the school day. But there was never a middle school mandate. What we've heard, I'm here to tell you that the process works, because what we have heard since the introduction of this bill is we've heard from healthcare professionals across the state. I think there's some signed up to testify, Mr. Chairman. But we've heard from people who've said it's about time that we look at this issue. And I'm proud to tell you that I've heard from, as many of you have, from art teachers, from music teachers, from parents who have children in those programs. And almost to a person, every one of those emails and letters have started out by saying, this is an important issue, and we need to look at it, but here are our concerns. And they've done a good job of laying those concerns out. Their concern primarily is that if we mandate minutes, that the only place that time can come from are those very valuable programs. Now, I've used my son, he doesn't know this, but I've used him really as a shield to defend myself from all of those emails, because he plays in the 6th grade band and plays the saxophone and loves the saxophone. I make that point to you to say this: it was never the intentions of this legislation to take time away from those programs. So we've gone back, and in this substitute that you have here, we have removed all requirements for any minutes per day. Currently in the state school board policy, there's a requirement that you have 90 clock hours of physical education instruction per year in grades K through 5. The language that we originally included would have increased that. So by removing the language, it's that 90 clock hours that is in place now. But what is more troubling to me is that we do not know how that's being delivered across the state. We don't even know if it is being delivered, because at the Department of Education, we don't have a point person, if you will. There's not one person whose primary responsibility it is to oversee the delivery of physical education instruction throughout the state. In my opinion, the most important part of this bill, and this part remains in the legislation, is the creation of an office at the Department of Education for that sole purpose. That there be one person designated to oversee that. Now, money has always concerned me, and how do we fund such things? The Department of Education, and we've confirmed this through their counsel, the Department of Education is structured in such a way that they can receive contributions. They can take donations. And I'm happy to tell you that the day that we introduced this legislation, we had a health group that approached us and said, we want to go on record as having supported such an idea, and we got $25,000 to put towards the cost of that. Since that time, I've had a number of groups to approach me and say, we want to help fund such a position. And by the way, the position doesn't exist if the funding is not available, so it's subject to funding. So this is not a mandate on the state budget or on any budget. But we've included that concept of private funding for the position. Anything that we do in this state in terms of refocusing our attention to this problem has got to have someone at the state level to help oversee and provide assistance at the local level, and we think that's a very important part of the legislation. In addition, we track some language from the Child Nutrition and WIC Reauthorization Act of 2004 that requires health advisory bodies. The School Health Advisory Council is actually the word that's used, that those groups be in place at the local level. Those are made up of parents, of teachers, of community leaders. It also requires that I think there be a member from the local health department included in that group, that organization be put together as an oversight and a body to make recommendations to not only the local school board, but also to the Department of Education about how we're looking at and how we're dealing with not only physical education, but health curriculum and also nutrition in our lunchrooms. What we have, and I'm going to stop and take questions or allow others to speak, Mr. Chairman, but what we have tried to do here in removing the mandated minutes is substitute language that really doesn't mandate anything. If it does, it mandates cooperation. Because there are some school systems that have contacted me since the bill has been introduced to say, we're doing what you want us to do. In fact, we're doing more. And here's how we do it. And I've heard some great ideas. I've heard some concepts that were new. And so what we want school systems to do is to share with us how you're delivering this 90 clock hours a year. Share it with us. Give us a report on how you're doing it. School systems are busy. They have a lot to do. So we went in and we added an additional year to the time requirement. This report is not due to the Department of Education until July the 1st of 2007. So they've got a year and 4 or 5 months to tell us what they're doing. And we've also asked them to think outside the box a little bit. And that is to say, if you were required to do more, how could you do it? How could you do it given the financial resources that you have, given the staff, the facilities that you have? How could you do it? And that takes me to this point. I think that one of the things that we have done, and as a member of the former member of the school board, with a mother and 2 sisters and a wife who are all educators, I'm very cognizant of the pressures that we, year after year after year, put on school systems. And we do it. We try not to, but we do. But until we are forced to think about this issue, we're never going to think about it. Until we're forced to deal with it in some fashion, we're never going to do it. And to steal a phrase from a gentleman who I think may testify before you in just a few moments, everybody wants progress, but nobody wants change. So what we've tried to do is take all of the thoughts that we've received in emails and letters and communications with you, Mr. Chairman, and to roll those into the changes in this bill so that we're not having a fiscal impact on the school systems or the state. We're not affecting the workload of teachers. We're not taking time away from any of the other tremendous programs in our system. We're simply saying, tell us what you're doing so that we can digest that information and determine if there is necessary a legislative response. We simply don't know what school systems are doing. Mr. Chairman, with that, I'll be glad to happy to answer questions from the committee. I know there are a number of people who've approached me, and they may be on your sign-up sheet to testify, which may answer some of the questions, and I'll handle it however you like for me to, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Carter, just one piece of clarification. I was reading through, and I think you may have addressed it at the end, but we are asking the school systems to imagine that they had to implement such a policy, and how would you do it? That is the report that we're asking them to prepare. Is that correct?
Well, we're asking them to really do 2 things. One is we want them to tell us how they're delivering that instruction now.
Right.
The 90 clock hours that's required is a concept where they provide 90 clock hours of health and physical education instruction. What I've been told by some systems is that they actually provide 90 clock hours of physical education in addition to health. What I've been told by other systems is that they talk about health when they're doing science, and they have 20 minutes of PE time twice a week. So I think we're all over the map about how we're doing it. And I'm not saying one is right and one is wrong, but I think that what we should do is find out what school systems are doing now, and then as a way to prompt them to think outside the box, say, well, if you had to do what we talked about at one time, if you had to do 150 minutes, could you do it? I think, frankly, the answer from some systems is going to be there's no way we could do it. We can't do it because we don't have the financial resources. And, in fact, we included in that specifically, in that change, we want you to tell us how it would affect you financially. We need to know that. So in short answer, two things. What are you doing now? And if you had to make a change, how could you do it?
Well, I think that's a good approach because it does allow us to find out where we are and what it might take to move in a direction that we know will be good for the health of students. My second question, this will be my last one, is that have you considered any other methods to try and address the broader problem, that we have with obesity in classes? And, I just coincidentally last night picked up a copy of GAE's publication No, and there's a feature article about a Decatur high school principal who initiated a no sugar policy in the food that their students had access to during their day, and the effects of that were remarkably beneficial, not only in terms of weight issues, but also behavioral issues. And so I'm just curious if you had considered moving along those lines.
I'm familiar with that article. I've read the article. In fact, spoke with, her name escapes me now, but spoke with that principal the other day about exactly what she was doing. We talked at one time about trying to from the top down, from the state level where we are, make some specific directives in terms of nutrition. There again, I'm much in favor of local control and the people at the local level making those decisions. I could foresee this, for example, this School Health Advisory Council looking at the practices within a particular elementary school, and those local people making the determination, instead of celebrating birthdays in the first grade class and bringing cupcakes to school 6 times a month, let's do it once a month. I mean, I can see that kind of common sense policy coming at the local level, and I'm not sure that I'm frankly not sure that that's what we should do at the state level. I commend this principal for doing that because I think it's done exactly what we're trying to do, and that's changed the way that we think and encourage students to make healthy lifestyle choices. This bill really is more at the 10,000-foot level than it is at ground level, and that's why the ground level things about mandated minutes are really not what's important to the bill, and frankly, it's probably very appropriate that they come out.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions from the committee members before we go to the audience for questions? All right, not this time. I'm going to remember you have a minute and a half pending, and just we'll start with we're going to go in this order: Benny Ferguson, then Jim Puckett, Don Rook. So Benny Ferguson with the Georgia Music Educators Association.
Chairman Coleman, ladies and gentlemen, Senator, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. My guess is this is the first time you've ever seen anybody from the Georgia Music Educators Association to approach you. We don't come out of the chute very often, and we only do so when we feel that the best interests of children are not being taken advantage of. We believe in the education of the whole child. We believe in physical education. I represent the 4th largest music educators organization in the country. We believe in strong programs throughout, and that includes music programs. We believe that to try to legislate lifestyles is not a good thing to do. We also would contend that any child that's in a marching band, a really good one, is getting a good physical education. We also contend that of the 35% of the kids that we know of who are obese, there are 65% who are out there playing soccer, they're in church basketball leagues, they're in drum and bugle corps, they're in all sorts of things. Here's what we would ask you. We would ask you to consider the cumulative effects of all the things that have come down the pike for generations on art and music programs. My full-time job is Director of Visual and Performing Arts for the Savannah-Chatham Public Schools, and we see impacts on these programs yearly from legislation that's well-intended from good people to do good things. But we've got to remember that there's more to the child than one particular element or two particular elements. Art, music are vital to reading, mathematics, and that sort of thing. And we would ask you to take the Hippocratic oath of some kind, which is first do no harm, and then consider what value these other programs have. And in closing, I'd like to say to you that we offer our services to you. Let us know what's going on. We'll be happy to give you our opinion and the opinions of the thousands of people we represent when it comes to the programs we offer, because we think we can prove to you that they are valuable. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. Next, we have Jim Puckett with GAEL.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I want to let the author of the legislation know that it's already had a positive impact on obesity in our state. I personally have lost 5 pounds worrying about the original provisions of the bill. Our association did have major concerns with the original provisions, but to the credit of the author and to some of the other organizations that are supporting the bill, substantial changes have been made, most of which our concerns have been addressed. As a result of these changes, it will allow us to identify what's already out there and commend some of the people that are already doing good things, as the author has suggested. It also would allow us to determine what the physical impact and the impact on time as far as academics and other programs that are essential to the well-being of the whole child, what impact it might have if this were implemented. So, again, I commend the author. We can support the substitute.
Thank you. We'll have Ben Johnson next, but Don Rooks and then Ben Johnson. Be ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Don Rooks representing the Georgia School Board Association, but also a proud holder of a physical education degree from Auburn University. So I had an interest in this bill for many aspects to begin with. First of all, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to commend the author for his willingness, his statesmanlike way in approaching the presentation of this bill. He has listened. He has responded. I truly believe it was never his intent to bump up against other very worthwhile programs. So we are happy to support this bill. In the end, when the day is done, people will be able to make informed decisions about their physical education and nutrition programs in schools because of this bill. Thank you.
All right, Jim Calloway be on deck. Ben Johnson with the Georgia State University.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm here to speak in favor of the bill and to represent the scientific aspects associated with it. And thank you to the committee for allowing me to speak to you today. I'll read my comments so that I can be as brief as possible. Much discussion and debate has occurred, many opinions expressed both on the pages of the AJC and in other forums since Senator Carter announced the Georgia Student Health and Fitness Act on January 26 on the state Capitol steps. The core of Senator Carter's proposed legislation focuses on the need to take action to stem the epidemic of childhood obesity and overweight among Georgia youth. As you likely know, recent research conducted by DHR showed that 43% of our third graders are obese or overweight. Senator Carter, with the support of a number of major organizations, many of whom are represented here today, has proposed an enhanced physical education experience for Georgia elementary and middle school students in an effort to reverse the alarming trend of physical inactivity and obesity among our young people. It seems that much of the debate so far has centered on the impact that increased time spent in physical education would have on academic courses such as math, science, and reading. Many individuals have expressed the opinion that math, science, and reading achievement would be negatively impacted by increased time spent in physical education by our young, unfit students. Others have noted that the childhood obesity epidemic is not a school issue. Clearly, there are no simple solutions for this very complex obesity epidemic. However, one fact is crystal clear. If we do nothing, then nothing will change. While increased time spent in physical education by elementary and middle schoolers may not alone reverse this alarming trend, it is a major step in the right direction. The scientific research is very clear. Increased time spent in moderate to vigorous physical activity every week has been shown to significantly improve fitness for persons of all ages, including reducing overweight and obesity.
Your time is up, but you should find your way to summarize. You look like you had 3 or 4 more pages, had me a little nervous.
Well, I came prepared, was not recognizing that we'd have this many speakers, so I apologize. If we are to succeed, parents and schools must get the message and take action. Clearly, it's a multi-factor issue. We need to be prepared to deal with it from a variety of perspectives. And in my opinion, and those of my colleagues at Georgia State, this is a very positive bill and one that we heartily support.
Thank you so much. All right, Jacqueline, you're on deck. All right, Jimmy Calloway, Georgia State University.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I'm here to speak in favor of the bill. In the brief time that I have, I think it's important to realize what we have before us today. There's an old adage that there's no more powerful force than an idea whose time has come. And I think as it relates to our health and our fitness, that time has come. The CDC has said that the time has come. Obesity is the #1 epidemic among young people in today's society. As I look around this room and I see all of you sitting here, it's your level of fitness that has allowed you to get through this legislative process. and many of you will continue to do so in the future. The same thing applies in the schools. A child cannot learn if they are not physically prepared. A child cannot learn if they are physically fit, if they are not physically fit. And so what we have to do is to take very seriously the leadership role, and I want to commend Senator Carter for doing what he's doing, and I ask the committee to give serious attention to this. It's a sad case when we look at the prevalence of obesity in Georgia, and we see that it has increased from 10.8% in 1990 to 25.2% in 2004. Even more importantly, in terms of discrepancies in health factors, more than 35% of African American kids ages 6 to 11 are overweight or at risk. And African American kids ages 6 to 11 are almost twice as likely to be overweight as non-Hispanic white kids. And so in terms of all of these issues, I think it behoves the Education Committee to take the leadership not only in terms of this bill, but to show leadership across the state and in fact across the country and begin to reverse the trends of obesity through an understanding of the importance of physical education in the classroom.
Thank you. All right, Jocelyn, you're on deck. Jacqueline Harlison, you're with Georgia Association for Health and Physical Education, correct?
Yes, I'm the Executive Director. Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity. I agree with Senator Carter that the strength of the Senate Bill 474 lies in the establishment of an Office of Student Health and Fitness within the State Department of Education. Having a position at the Department of Education would allow for the coordination between education and health initiatives and allow for increased grant funding for the state. While schools cannot solve the obesity and health problems of this state alone, they do play a significant part in helping students to understand and establish lifelong health habits like regular physical activity. 95% of all school-age children are in school for the majority of their waking hours each day. Parents want support from educational institutions in rearing healthy, fit students who are ready and able to learn in the classroom. A position in health and physical education at the state level has been noticeably vacant for those in our field for the last 10 years. The reinstatement of this position is vitally important to health and physical educators throughout the state who want and need leadership at the state level. The person in this position will be able to provide expertise in revising the health and physical education curriculum in Georgia to reflect best practices and scientific research. That person would be able to provide leadership and training for local school health and physical education efforts. This person could provide... Thank you for this opportunity.
Great job.
And I would like to let you know that our association, a nonprofit of teachers, is the one that was willing to put forth $25,000 toward the funding of this position at the State Department.
Thank you so much. All right. Andy Lord, you're on deck. Jocelyn Whitfield with the Georgia Association of Educators.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And also thank you, Senator Carter, for bringing the bill in the first place. GAE supports not only the substitute, but we also support the entire concept of making sure that our students are healthy. And that doesn't mean just nutrition and just physical activity, but it also means looking at improving the whole child, which is part of the concerns that have been raised from music and art educators. And that's another reason why we support this substitute, to give us the opportunity to make sure we are addressing all of the areas of concerns, to make sure we are looking at the whole child and not just implementing a plan that certainly addresses an issue that we all recognize is getting worse and worse. And for a classroom teacher to know that their child has the ability to have an outlet. If any of you have ever sat in an elementary school class for more than 20 minutes, you know those kids need some physical activity. And it's becoming more and more important that they have that. So while we supported the original bill and the concept of adding those minutes to the elementary level, I think this is a much better tactic at getting to the issue not only of PE and nutrition, but also how can we maintain art, music, foreign language, drama in the elementary and middle grades, and also do what we can to make sure we are educating the whole child.
Thank you. All right. On deck, Tom Womack. Andy Lord. Andy's with the American Cancer Association. Andy.
Mr. Chairman.
And one of my constituents, so he can have all the time he wants. No. Andy, 1.5 minutes.
Per our conversation, Mr. Chairman, I have pared it back to 45 minutes. Just want to, again, urge the committee to support the bill. As you all are probably aware, there is also a link between obesity and cancer, obviously, which is our primary goal. At the end of the day, we believe that the bill is good for health, it's good for kids. We believe it also have a positive economic impact due to the significant economic impact that obesity is having. So we urge our support.
Thank you so much. On deck would be William Saxon, Tom Womack with Page.
Thank you, Chairman Coleman and members of the committee. The Professional Association of Georgia Educators has always supported physical education. We believe that there's room at the top for every program to be good. We've talked with Senator Carter about the concerns we had in the bill, and we support the substitute. So I'll not take my full minute. I'll defer that to the next speaker.
Thank you so much. Our last speaker will be Ashley Bell on deck. Dr. Saxon, if you would come forward, your Georgia chapter for American Academy of Pediatrics, all right? Couldn't read. That was all right. Good. Go to it.
All right. The Georgia chapter supports this bill as well. One of the things that I think that we have done extremely well with over the course of the last 50 to 75 years is taking care of the epidemic infections that were present in the country at that point. We currently have an epidemic of even greater proportions, obesity, and this epidemic is one of our own making. One of the things that we're doing in medicine right now is something called predictive health, so that we can predict, based on what's going on with your health status now, what you're likely to have as far as a health problem years from now. The concern that I've got, and the reason we're supportive of this bill, is that today we're seeing adult diseases in kids, hypertension, hyperglycemia, diabetes, things that we used to never see before. So that I think that and anything we can do to help fight the obesity epidemic is absolutely essential, and the pediatricians at the state support this bill.
Thank you so much. All right, Ashley Bell, American Heart Association. Ashley?
Chairman Coleman.
It's our last speaker, so.
Yeah, I get to wrap up. Members of the committee, we really appreciate you all hearing this bill today. I understand that you probably received lots of emails and contact from constituents about this bill. And we had no idea it was going to be quite so controversial, but we really feel like by pulling together everybody who had some interest in this, that that Senator Carter today has presented you with a substitute that will be acceptable to all the parties involved. Just to briefly mention the 3 handouts that you all received with your information. One does show a list of the organizations that have supported this bill, and actually in the format that it passed the Senate, but they're all still supportive of the committee substitute, as well as one of the things that we heard a lot was, why are you asking us to make sure that kids are healthy only when they're in schools? Why are you not working on this at the level of when they're at home or when they're in their churches or whatever? As a representative of a national voluntary health organization, I'll tell you that we are working on all aspects of a child's health and of everyone's health. And so the 2 pamphlets that I provided you there, one is called Just Move, which is the American Heart Association's pamphlet that we distribute at health fairs across the country, asking people to be physically active and to know the implications that holds for their personal health. The other pamphlet there is a piece that this is the first time that's ever happened. The Diabetes Association, Cancer Society, and Heart Association, all 3 joined together to do a group campaign. And one of the tenets of that campaign, to touch on all of those diseases that we work against, is physical activity in 30 minutes a day. So I wanted to let you all know about that as well.
Thank you so much. All right, you've heard all of our speakers, and I want to say that when this bill started out, I talked with Senator Carter, you're correct, and there was a lot of concerns. I probably have received more emails and more calls and had more confrontations about this bill than any we've had in a long time. But I will say that honestly, he has addressed the music educators' concerns, the art educators' concerns. He's addressed the time constraints, the middle school concerns, the elementary teachers having to teach PE. And what we're looking at, so where's Senator Carter? If he just stand up there, Senator Carter, I want to be sure everyone understands. You've listened to what everyone said, and what we have today is a bill that's simply asking for a study to be done. You're asking the State Department to take and create a position to work with all the school systems to do a survey to see what is being taught, how it's being taught, when it's being taught, and what's going on. And basically, that is all this bill is going to do. Once that is done, it's over. And then it'll be up to the legislature and Dean Alford or whatever to decide where it goes. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. I really think, frankly, it's probably irresponsible for us as legislators to act until we have all the facts, and that's what this bill is designed to do.
And I personally appreciate you meeting with me, because at one time we had talked about doing several things with this bill, from killing it to moving it to, but I still want to say to you that I appreciate, and I think you've done the study part we want, and I still want to make another. So I have any questions from anyone on the committee at this time? All right, you're number 7, right? I have a representative. Maxwell.
Senator Carter, I appreciate your bringing this forward and might do that. I have a question on page 1, line 20. I see throughout several areas of the bill here that each local board of education is strongly encouraged or encouraged to do. Here we're still saying that they shall establish local student advisory council.
That's right. That's actually not something that they can get around doing. According to the Child Nutrition and WIC Reauthorization Act of 2004, they're required to put in place.
Do they have these already?
A lot of school systems have those. They have to have them by July 1st of this year. A lot of school systems already have them in place. That really mirrors the language in the federal act. So we're not putting anything on them that they already don't have to do.
Make sure that, because there's other areas that say strongly encouraged or encouraged.
That's right. That's correct.
All right, Representative Reese.
I have the same question.
Same question. Okay, so they had it answered. All right, Representative, let's see, Stanley Turner.
Yes, Senator Carter, I just want to applaud you for bringing this bill to us. Back in 2004, I chaired a House Obesity Study Committee, and a lot of what we would like to see done, this is the first step, I think, and this bill has been on life support, and it's getting stronger and stronger, and I thank you for doing what you've done to improve it and make it so that we can begin to look collectively and make a difference in our state as it relates to obesity. Because there's so many things that's going on in different areas, different places, different arenas. And to bring it all together will help us tremendously. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. We didn't get here overnight. We're not going to fix it overnight, but I hope this is a good first step. Thank you.
All right, I have a question from Representative Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's really more of a statement than it is a question. You know, we've dealt with several bills today already that talk about various aspects of curriculum, and I think just a word of caution to myself and to the other members of the committee. At some point, I think we're going to have to start to treat curriculum like budget. When you come and want to add something to the curriculum, we're going to have to say, what is it you want to take away from the curriculum? Because there's only so much time during a day. We either have to expand how long we're going to be in school or stop adding things to the curriculum. Having said that, like the others, I appreciate the changes you made in the bill. I was very concerned when the first time I read 474, but I can support this one. And with that in mind, Mr. Chairman, when appropriate, I would make a motion.
Make your motion.
Move for due pass on this.
Do I have a second? Second. All right, let me say this to you now. Senator and I have talked about this. I also, even though we're going to move this forward, I am going to refer this bill, the original version of this bill, to Dean Alford, also the I-Square Committee, because we moved the art education there earlier. Now, we're moving yours forward for this whole concept, because I think we've got to encourage our task force is looking at. Now, we're moving your bill forward, but we're going to ask him to look at this whole thing at PE as well as art, music, and PE, where it fits in instruction, where the money should come from, the time. So we're going to ask Dean Alford also, as they look at the education reform and funding of education, to consider this also. So I have a motion that we move this forward. I have a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Do pass, 100%, unanimous. I want to thank you. And the committee, if you'll stay around a few minutes, we have about 2 more minutes and we'll be through. I want to assign the following bills to subcommittees. This House bill, listen to me, House Bill 1491, Martin, It's requiring 70 days per year. It's lowering the school attendance a little bit. That's assigned to academic support. Representative Reese, House Bill 1518, Local Boards of Education, breach of security, academic support. We have Senator Moody, Senate Bill 515, expanding grades. That's a QBE required funding formula that we need to look at. That's academic support. We have three other bills that are already over here. One passed, I think, yesterday in the Senate, and we're going to have in the House, and we'll be assigning those as we go. So anybody have any questions about the three bills that we have assigned?
What was the middle number?
All right, here we go. Once again, the House Bill 1491 Martin, that's academic support. House Bill 1518 by Representative Reese, Barbara Reese, academic support. And Senate Bill 515, Senator Moody, to academic support. Also, look in your folder. You have an invitation. Please look at this invitation. Let Janet, it's next Tuesday, the 14th. Let Janet know if you can or can't attend this activity. Please let her know as soon as possible. Do we have any questions? Anybody else want to say something? I want to thank this committee. I mean, this is a day's work. Thank y'all. This education committee, you're on target, and I appreciate it. Thank you.